Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Syngenta Canada, Alberta Wheat Commission, and C&M Seeds.
Pam Durockney, cereal specialist with Manitoba Agriculture, joins us again here on Real Agriculture. And Pam, with the seeding season underway, seed mortality, we often think about 1,000 kernel weight and seeding rates and all the other things in our formula for getting a good plant stand, but seed mortality is also part of that formula?
It definitely is. So when producers have, kind of chosen what their target plant stand is, they have, like you said before, they have the 1,000 kernel weight, they have the germination percentage. I think one thing they really need to keep in mind as well is kind of factor in that seedling mortality. So really in terms of what the seeds you've put into the ground and what seed germinates, what actually of those don't actually form a seedling or a plant. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Most of the time, most producers or agronomists kind of have that range of 5 to 10% in terms of kind of assuming that's what your seedling mortality rate would be. But I know there can be extreme ranges, so it can be as little as 5%, it can be as high as 20%. So that's something to keep in mind too. So if you're seeding into maybe less than ideal conditions, so early on in the year when you've got cooler soil conditions, those types of things, maybe that's a time when you should maybe be bumping up that seedling mortality factor in terms of accounting for it when you're really calculating your seeding rates.
So bumping it up, 15, 20%, or how much higher?
I think it really does depend, and I think it's one of those factors that really can be tailored for each individual producer. So I definitely encourage producers to go out after their seeding operation, once the crop is up and growing, to go out and do some plant stand counts. So they really know, they have what they had targeted, and then they can go out and measure what they actually did achieve. And then they can start to answer some questions in terms of if those don't match up as closely as they'd like to, what kind of really contributed to some of that seedling mortality that they did see. And using that information can helpfully, can benefit the producer in future years in terms of, really figuring out what it is for their farm, because seedling mortality really will vary from year to year, from field to field, and by producer as well in terms of the management that they use for their farm and their seeding operation.
And there could be many factors, whether it's equipment or the environment.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. So there's a lot of things that come into play in terms of what crop you have at the end of the day in terms of your establishment. It can be herbicide residues, it could be seed place nitrogen or fertilizer toxicity. It could be planted too deep. It could be plant or insect issues. It could be poor seed to soil contact. So there could be a lot of things that impact your stand establishment at the end of the day. But knowing what those are can definitely help you going into the future. And if there are things that are associated, in terms of trying to factor in what your seedling mortality is, I think that will help you going into the future.
All right. Thanks, Pam.
Great. Thank you.